we go.
Right.
You're the chair for this.
Oh, I'm the chair. Oh, okay. Well, I'm calling the meeting to order at 4:21. And we have no 2449 requests. Do we have any public comment?
We received none prior to the meeting. I don't think we have any.
Anyone out there in television land wish to comment on just items in general?
We got Rick and that's all, that's it.
I don't see Rick. Is that
He's not on the bottom. Oh, no, yeah.
okay? All right. Well, hearing none, we'll move on to item 4, employee benefit health insurance.
So this
Go ahead, please.
This is the standard item that we discuss in August of every year, which is our cafeteria plan, the health insurance benefit that we offer the district employees.
Yep.
My staff report has sort of a brief history. Originally, when the cafeteria plan was set up, the goal was to allow employees a 100% paid family level PPO plan. That has since changed in the last probably 5 years because the PPO plan for the family had gotten very, very expensive, where it became unaffordable to the district. It also became somewhat unaffordable for employees. We had a lot of employees shift with families to the family level HMO plan because that allowed them to have no out-of-pocket costs. So the cafeteria plan covered that. That's been the trend that we followed for the last 4 years. And so the recommendation is written exactly like that, is to try to maintain the family level coverage for the HMO plan. Ironically,
There are multiple HMO plans, right?
There are two. They say there's 11 plans, but we're in a region with multiple counties. And so of the 11 plans available, not every plan is available to all of our employees.
Okay.
Some are excluded by zip code. Some do not actually cover it all in this county. So there really aren't 11 available plans. There's really about 5 plans. And so it's 2 HMO plans, 2 PPO plans. The HMO plan I'm referring to is the less expensive of the 2. There is no lower HMO plan that's available to all of our employees. So the recommendation that I'm making will cover the lowest level HMO plan, 100% for families. As of this year, there's actually been a shift. The family level PPO plan actually is the lowest level family PPO plan that is available to all of our employees, actually is almost identical in the price. They're within $100 of each other now, which normally isn't the case. Next year it could
per
be,
month?
yes, it could be completely different next year, but it just so happened that one raised 1 year and this one raised this year, and so they're pretty level now. It really just depends on sort of what the market dictates. So essentially, the recommendation of the increase in the cafeteria plan would cover either one 100%, the lowest level HMO and the lowest level PPO.
Okay.
So if any of our employees choose to choose a higher level HMO or a higher level PPO, they will pay out of pocket a fairly significant amount.
And how is that number different from 2294?
You mean the more expensive ones? It's like 3,200.
No, the 2294 is the number that we have had the last 3 or 4 years.
That is correct.
Okay, and you're saying that still
2,400 is what the recommendation is.
okay?
Yeah.
All right.
So the increase that's being recommended to maintain the same level of coverage is 2,400. Also in my staff report, I addressed cashback. The 2,400 would eliminate cashback in its entirety for anybody choosing a family plan. So those people would not receive any cashback. We will still have some non-family level employees receiving cashback. We've had several employees that have left the district that were receiving cashback. So it is naturally sort of eliminating itself to some degree. So in here, I also.
Well, the 2,400 though covers either of the lowest level family plans.
That is correct.
So if somebody picks a family plan,
Correct.
there wouldn't be naturally any cash back.
That wasn't necessarily the case before. There was a nominal amount. It's been ever reducing amount.
Okay.
Since we've been trying to essentially maintain the HMO level plan. So naturally it's reduced itself, but in this particular instance, it will completely eliminate for 50% of probably 70% of our employees. And then, like I said, it will naturally, as people leave. My recommendation in here also is to consider if we are looking at reducing or eliminating the cashback, to potentially do it by eliminating the cashback for any new hires effective a certain date. As part of the class and comp study, that was something that we did notice several agencies have done. They notated that in their benefit summary.
Eliminated the cashback. Yeah.
Effective a specific date.
Sure.
So it would naturally phase out for their existing employees, but would not be offered otherwise. And so that's something that I mentioned here as an option to address that, if that's something that the full board wants to discuss. I know it always comes up as a sort of a compounding factor in costs when it comes to overtime and benefits in general. So I'm throwing that out there as something that seems to be an acceptable way to address that over time.
I have a couple of questions. I just want to make sure I understand what you're proposing here. Now, my understanding is that the cashback, pardon me, my understanding is that we have a cafeteria plan and the current amount is somewhere around $2,400.
$22.94.
$22.94. Okay. And that covers for a family plan, for HMO or whatever. You've established some kind of criteria that would establish that, and we're sticking with the same criteria, right?
Well, they can choose any plan they want. The cashback is always based, recommendation has now been based on 100% coverage of a family level, low family level HMO plan is what we base that amount on. So this year, if you want to continue with the trend, you have to increase the cafeteria plan to $2,400. Because the premium for the low level HMO family plan at $2,394.
Well, that's not bad. We're going from 2,200 to 2,400.
It's almost 2,300 to 24.
Almost 2,300.
2294.
That doesn't sound
24.
catastrophic to me.
No.
And so we're going to keep with the same philosophy that we have presently in place, in that we have our employees are used to getting a certain level of family coverage. And we're going to continue, because of inflation and the cost of the insurance going up, we have to increase our contributions to 2,400 or so. And so I support that. Now on the cashback, we have a cashback program and we can argue the merits of it. But I'm in kind of the mode right now with 4 openings and us and other agencies having trouble hiring people. The last thing I'm interested in doing is reducing anybody's benefits. But it sounds like we're going to keep the 6. Technically, we should increase if there's inflation, we should increase the $650 cashback amount. But I'm okay with leaving it where it is, kind of let it, as you suggested, kind of peter out or fizzle out over a period of time.
Well, that's only if we don't offer it to new hires. Will it eventually go away?
Well, I mean, if we had a couple 100% inflation, the 650 wouldn't be worth very much. So that's what I'm talking about when I say it's going to fizzle out with time. Is that if we keep it at a fixed 650, and there's inflation every year over decades, that number is going to diminish.
That's true. Yeah.
So I support your recommendation if we're going to maintain the same. I think I understand it, and I support your recommendation.
I mean, the 650 number has diminished over time in general. It's not it's only 650 for a very few people. I mean, you have to be a single person now to receive 650. Otherwise, you receive nominal to nothing, because obviously we've chased premiums, not the 650. And so the 650 is really only a benefit for a select few. It does not exist for other people.
And that hasn't changed this year, or it's not going to change next year.
It will. Yes, it completely is eliminated for the majority of our employees by virtue of the cafeteria plan being set at just the amount to cover the premium.
Okay.
Yes.
But I mean, that was last year too.
Last year was a nominal amount. This
I
year
mean, we
will
had
not
a couple couple on the just a couple people were getting the 650 because we set our cutoff. So our cafeteria plan is so generous that most people are covered 100% or whatever.
That is correct, yes.
Okay, I'm good.
The staff report says 2,400 works for 95% of the employees.
We do have a few employees who either are a family level and they are currently covered under a PPO plan that would have out-of-pocket costs because this amount would not cover the plan they're on. They may opt to switch to a different plan. We also have a couple of employees who have a high-level PPO as a employee plus spouse or dependent. They would also have an out-of-pocket cost because those premiums are quite high. But most people see that coming and we talk to them and are completely aware way in advance. I mean, there are people that I foresaw that coming last year for this year that I've already talked to that have come in and, you know, I've given them resources with CalPERS to compare plans, look at doctors that might be accepting new patients, et cetera. And then generally during open enrollment, they elect to change because most people do not want to pay out of pocket.
Yeah. And the 2,400 then would be the same for retirees.
Correct.
Okay. There are what, 15 now?
I believe so.
There we go.
Bill?
Yeah, I'm okay with this. I don't want to ever get ourselves in a position where we're taking benefits away from somebody. This doesn't seem to be the case. I do have a question with the cafeteria, the 650 though. So in our study, when we looked at this, there's no other districts that are doing that, or very few that are doing that.
There
on the
were,
cafeteria.
well, I mean, keep in mind, we use 8 comparable agencies, so I mean, our pool of evaluating was small. There were a few that still do it. There were some that do, like I said, do it and have an end date of no new hires after a certain date receive it. And there are some that don't do it at all. So it's really a mixed bag. I wouldn't say that it's necessarily a trend, but there are definitely people that still do it.
And the 650 is a max.
Correct.
It's not what necessarily any of the current employees that are getting cash back are getting that much.
There are, if you're single, you're getting it.
Okay. I'm wondering if we hire new people, if they're young, they're more likely to be single.
I mean, yeah, I mean, I couldn't speculate on that. I could say that of the new hires since I've been here, they've all been families since I've been here. So, but prior to me being here, they were singles actually. The people that got hired a couple of years before I got here were single. So it's hard to say.
I'd be inclined to leave the cashback provision in, cap it at the 650, not change that. But that's, at least for the moment, that's one thing that we can offer to single potential employees that could give us an advantage over other districts.
Sure. And I mean, to be honest with you, I mean, with this employee pool, plus if you had every new hire get 650, monetarily, budget wise, it makes very little difference in the whole scheme of things. So
You're budgeting 2,400 per employee
sure,
anyway.
sure.
So
Yeah, I'm
it's
good
just
with
the effect it has on their average comp and therefore their overtime.
Sure. I mean, that's where the cost really comes in. The district is the compound overtime, but like I said, this naturally sort of ebbs and flows. So it's, I mean, I think at one time it was you could say it was a significant cost. I wouldn't say that's a significant cost now.
And overall, looking at the big picture, the cafeteria plan of $2,400 is pretty generous.
It is.
You know, I've always, during my career, had to pay, because I had a family, I got a
Yeah.
third level that was fixture provided by the district or whatever, whoever, my employer. But I had to pay the difference, and there was always 300 or 400 a month or something like that. So
Yeah, me too.
we're covering 95% of people to 100%. So I think we gotta make sure our staff understands how generous, this could be considered generous.
Yeah, I think at the end of my career, I think I was paying more than that for my portion. I think I was up around $800. It was pretty expensive. So it is indeed a good thing. I just want to make sure that we're not taking anything away from anybody, because it's really important
I agree.
that we maintain.
We don't want to retract that cash back for anybody that's here getting it. But if it's not material to the district's finances at this point, no matter who gets it.
Well, after looking and reading through the next item we've got coming up, I think it might be kind of an important bit to have.
So Steve, you said you don't want to retract anything that somebody's already getting. 2,400 will retract stuff that people are already getting, because it zeroes out the majority of people. So if your goal is to actually have people get cash back, that will not achieve it.
No,
This is not going to achieve it.
I'm not proposing
Okay, okay,
to pay people extra.
okay.
um,
Yeah.
But maintaining the current rule,
Correct. The eligibility
nobody
for
can
those eligible.
argue
Sure.
that they're being shorted
Fair enough.
with the current rule. Okay? So
Yes, sir.
what would we recommend to the full board? I mean, the proposition here is simply to increase the cafeteria plan by $106 a month per employee, per retiree.
Correct.
So that's what, 36, 37, 38 people potential.
So that's our main recommendation, that we keep the cash back in 650.
And keep the cash back at 650.
Yes.
Is there anything else we need to decide?
That item.
Okay, well, let's move on to the next item then, recruitment updates.
Okay, so this one is a little bit more complex. We have several vacant positions. We have the administrative technician for the IT and engineering department. That's more of a technical administrative position. It does handle certified payroll, updates some of our GIS and grid map, and helps with sending out as-bills. I mean, they have to know that. They have to have some sort of contact for project management / engineering type work. They don't have to be an engineer or anything like that. Just a higher level technical skill. They're generally pretty tech savvy. They do backup and when on vacation for things like this. Backing up servers. They maintain and update our website, those sorts of things. So they provide
Shooting faults in the SCADA system.
Yes, sorry.
Yeah. Not quite.
Yeah.
So who does that when you're in Denver?
Well, we contract with Taft, so we have a contract with Taft, and they can handle.
Okay, so they're on call for the higher level IT stuff.
So it's really, the job description, as with all of these, are written so that somebody actually comes in with foundational knowledge they would have obtained from likely another comparable agency. None of these are entry-level positions. They have to have some technical expertise, preferably in a public agency, specifically wastewater or water industry. We'll take public agencies. They were in public works, working in safety, presumably they'll have some of this technical experience. So, which has made it a little bit more challenging. Obviously, our collection system operator, we're down an operator in that department. You'll remember in the budget, we allocated one of the admin positions up here and transferred into the collection system so that they have a little bit more of a robust team. And then we need a senior treatment plant operator because we must have a treatment plant operator to be our chief plant operator. We do not currently have a 4 at all, other than Bradshaw, who's 5. So if Bradshaw left, we would not be in compliance. We would not have anyone to designate.
Not be able to operate the plant?
From a legal standpoint. So it's a big gap that we're trying to fill. And so we also have our environmental compliance inspector, which was our senior construction inspector, which will be actually will be on the August 26th agenda to formally sort of adopt those changes to our salary schedule. It's already gone to the personnel committee. That was a reclassification. So in total, we have 4 vacancies, not including the general manager. We anticipate 2 additional vacancies probably within the next 12 to 18 months, just natural retirement that we're anticipating. We are having a very difficult time recruiting. Collection system operator, I have been out for recruitment twice. We have a recruitment team from the DC Star. They actually contract out with a company in Minnesota, paid heavily for that. So they essentially have like this algorithm, and they put it out to all of the government websites. If you search something, it'll come up.
Minnesota has a lot of excess collection system
No,
operators.
it's just a recruitment team in general that VC Star actually goes through a subsidiary in Minnesota for almost a lot of their legal and publication type things now. And they provide you like algorithms and studies on what the probability of getting somebody is, and I've seen them. It's pretty dim. But they really help us out with those. We're on every major industry website. It has a sort of a recruitment portal. We're posting on those. We're posting on Indeed, ZipRecruiter. I mean, everywhere you could possibly post and actively recruit from, we have done so with our recruitment. We have not been successful. I would say that we have, in the staff report, we have 2 to 3 minimally qualified applicants for recruitment. And I say minimally, I say that if senior treatment plan aside, I'll get to that. If these folks were in our normal batch of between 12 and 25 qualified applicants, they wouldn't be in our first round of interviews. So I would not call this a competitive recruitment by any stretch of the imagination. The senior treatment plan operator 4, we got 2 qualified applicants. The minimum qualifications and experience and certification level requirements that are very, very specific. So you're either qualified or you're not qualified on paper. So we did get 2. I think in a normal recruitment, we probably get 5. I think we will move forward with interviewing those 2 because they are qualified, and it only takes 1, and we'll be essentially looking at whether they be a good match and are genuinely interested. I think that's a little bit of the concern. Sometimes at that level, there's people who have a lot of feelers out for sort of their end game. And this particular position was recruited with the requirement that they have to be willing to take on the chief plant operator role when designated. It is position contingent. Their job is contingent on it. And so I've already spoken with LPW, and that's perfectly acceptable that they essentially sign something saying that at the time, if we delegate them and they refuse, that essentially we have the right to terminate them because of that.
Why would someone take a plant operator 4 job and then refuse to be that?
It's a huge liability. Like, it's a lot of responsibility personally, and there are people who are forwards who are not interested in that role at all. So there's a lot more heavy responsibility that Bradshaw can speak to, where you personally are attesting and certifying things, and you're not as much under the cover of the agency you work for, and so some people, that's not something they're willing to do. And I think you're more on-call responsibility, and so for people with families or what have you, it's not a responsibility they're willing to take on. So it's a very specific person who has that as a professional
Rank and doesn't want the responsibility.
Well,
I would rather not have them working.
That's why we want to make sure that somebody's serious about
about what our gap is.
what our gap is and what our needs are and what they're willing to do and what it requires, for them to come in and fulfill those functions for us. The State Water Resource Control Board has a requirement. Our facility is a class 4 facility, so you have to be at least a grade 4 wastewater treatment plant operator to actually be legally responsible for that facility. Chief plant operator duties are responsible for reporting to the regional board, and ultimately are responsible for compliance and reporting, regardless of hierarchy.
And so there's a need for that, it would be good to have somebody come in and be able to fulfill those shoes moving forward. In my, not only in my absence, but at some point, we'll need somebody to fill that role. So it's a good thing to do, for succession reasons and legal reasons. And it's why we're looking to move somebody into that role.
I have a concern. I just heard something that I've heard for the first time that has me a little concerned. I've always assumed that if somebody was working for the district, that's an employee, and they were working in good faith and doing what they thought their job was, that they would, and if something happened and there was a mistake and some kind of legal repercussions, they would be protected by under our insurance or under our legal protection, or whatever.
Sure. I mean, sure. I think, the goal is always to operate in good faith. But if there was something of some catastrophic something or some regulatory something that was missed out of negligence, I mean, the district can only help somebody so much when another regulatory agency is essentially saying they didn't meet their requirements, that's imposed by that agency. And so essentially it comes down to essentially, best foot forward versus negligence. And I mean, that happens. And so, but yes, of course, obviously if there were mistakes, we have bills in our.
Everybody makes mistakes.
Sure, of course.
And I would hope that our employees are protected under our umbrella so that they make an honest mistake, that they're not going to be personally liable and go bankrupt because they were working for us.
No,
And if that's holding people out from wanting to join our organization, then we need to figure out how to provide coverage, whether we make them, our employees, additional insured or whatever. But somehow there has to be a way of making sure that our employees that are taking responsibility, so they're going to be protected.
no,
I think it's like with anything else. It's people that fulfill high level administrative roles. They're confined and have to make decisions, and they're responsible. It's a level of responsibility that they take on. Engineers, if they're designing something, they're responsible for that design.
You're signing that paper,
Right.
you're taking on some liability.
right. And in this particular instance, this is a name specific person. Like we have to actually tell them who is the designated person, and they have to meet the minimum criteria in order to do that based on the configuration of our treatment plan. And that's what this particular position has to do. I mean, and that's unavoidable. And like I said, there's a lot of regulatory requirements that they have to sign off on, be familiar with, et cetera. And that's not everybody's wheelhouse. They'd rather be sort of boots on the ground at the lower level, leading, mentoring, et cetera. And this takes you up a couple of notches above that. It's not for everybody. And so we acknowledge that. And you can be a 4 and not be a chief plan operator. And that's great. But in this particular instance, this is what we need.
So these two applicants that we have, has either one of them responded to a question like, are you willing to take that responsibility?
We have not started our interviews. We specifically ran our recruitment with that condition, very clearly stated. So presumably if you've applied, you acknowledge and have somewhat demonstrated that that is something you're willing to do. Rest assured, we'll ask that question in multiple fashions.
Yeah, that's be clear.
Including that is a job contingency is designated, so we can't opt out 2
That's a
years from
deal
now.
breaker if you say
Decide.
no.
Correct.
Right, sure.
And so it is to fill a specific gap. And so the recruitment was worded very strategically that way. So hopefully they read it and applied accordingly.
Okay.
But the reason that this is coming up is like I said, I would not call these successful recruitments for the most part. I would not recommend moving forward with interviews for 2 of the 3 positions, and we are possibly unlikely to find anybody in the 3rd one, even with 2 qualified candidates. This is just not, we are not the only ones in this particular.
But you and Bradshaw would do the primary interviewing in this case?
Yeah, yes, and then you would probably have somebody else in there as well.
Okay.
So in any case, we'll move forward with interviewing the senior treatment plant operator candidate. Would not recommend doing that with the other two. Essentially, it's coming to you as a, what do we want to do sort of thing. So here's some data. There are 25 open positions that match these three in some fashion, within a 40-mile radius of here, these exact positions at other agencies. So we're all vying for the same people in the exact same positions. Like I said, these three, and including the ones that environmental compliance inspector, they are all specifically written where these people have to come from another agency. And so we are essentially trying to get somebody else's employee.
Right. Okay.
We just don't have that option. So it's a tough one. Nobody has a lot of staff. Everybody has vacancies, and we need somebody that they have.
Part of the requirement for this job, like most of them, I think, is that you're able to respond to a call and be present somewhere in particular within 20 minutes, 30 minutes, something like that. Are these people, the two that have applied, are they local?
Yes.
Okay. Because one of the things that we talked about at the CASA conference was economic hurdles to recruiting.
And
And people moving right now,
correct.
Yeah, it's not a
face a
good kind of.
considerable hurdle if they've got a 2 or 3% house mortgage and they have to swap it for a 7%. They're a whole lot less likely to want to move, no matter where you're talking about.
I think we're dealing with a lot of economic factors in our recruitment. I think geography is working against us. We're very, very expensive to live here. I hate to bash on our school district, but if you're a family, it would not be a win to move here and put your kids in school here. If you're from an area which has better schools.
Sure.
So that's not a selling point. We're a great place to work. I think it's a dwindling industry right now. I don't think COVID was necessarily a factor in that, but I think there were a lot of retirements. So there are a lot of people leaving and less people coming in. And maybe that will change later, but I think the level in which we're trying to recruit for is a very small pool of people. And like I said, hopefully that will change and there's more people coming in. It's unfortunate because there are agencies that are bigger that are able to have in training positions and stuff like that. We don't have the staff to provide that oversight.
That is uncertified people.
Uncertified people take the risk of putting a bunch of resources into training somebody who does not become certified, and then we have to let them go. We can't legally leverage them certain ways until they have achieved, certain driver's license requirements, certain certification requirements. So we're not really achieving our objective by hiring, that low level here. We still have the volume to sort of compensate for it.
But everybody has to start somewhere.
Yeah.
And if there's no pool of grade 4s, we might have to hire entry level and commit to training them and educating them and maybe sending them to classes at Ventura College or whatever.
How long does it take to get to be level 4 though? It takes several years, I would think.
Depends on your education level. I think you can get there in 4 years with
Yeah.
some educational degrees.
It's a little hard. We've had some challenges, sort of having folks get comfortable at a specific place, and that's good for them. And I think that's a little bit of what's created a gap here, which is completely fine. I mean, you stay where you feel comfortable and where you feel most successful. But there's more responsibility that you take on as you get into these higher levels. And I think, some people either aren't ready to develop those skills or realize that's not where they want to be, or their priorities in life change or what have you, which is completely fine. But that is the risk that you run of bringing people up that they stall someplace and then you have this gap. And I think a little bit that's sort of what we've experienced.
On the other hand, if everybody that you hire is gunning for Bradshaw's job, you have a different problem.
Sure, fair enough. Potentially a better problem to have.
Yeah.
Might be.
Yes. And so I think we've seen, a lot of agencies go out for recruitment multiple times for their operator position, continually increasing their salary ranges to try to sort of buy their way into the market. I know that's not always the most popular thing to do, but it is happening. So I think we, you know, probably need to have a conversation of if that's something that we're willing to do, because it's happening, and so we are getting outpriced with our local agency looking for the same position.
Yeah, I've seen a roller coaster ride over the last 30 years between public sector and private sector. There was, when I started, one of the biggest attractions for me was the health insurance. We didn't make a whole lot of money here, but she made girls, so I was interested in health insurance. I knew the public sector didn't pay that well, but they had good benefits. So that was a driving factor for me. We've seen the roller coaster go up and down between public and private. You could make a lot more money back in those days in private. And then we saw periods where you could get 200 applicants for an entry level position in the public sector because, private went down on the pay scale, and public sector kind of went up and stayed steady.
Job security
More
is better public.
yeah, and I think we're at a point that even though we're on par comparatively with market from, according to the comparables that we used in 2023, I think the public sector is going to experience the need to come up. Just because we're comparable doesn't mean that the market for the public sector in our particular facet of this industry is down. I don't know if I think if we wait, I think eventually we'll see the public sector rise up because everybody's experiencing the same problems we're having.
Well, that rising up is us changing
That-
this big grid
I
of
agree.
all the salaries.
I agree. So,
And how much of that would we need to do to
yeah,
rise up?
that's the big question. Where do we go? What's the best thing to do to
How much
attract
can the
people,
district
recruit people,
afford?
and retain people? Pardon me?
The people that have left, my impression, of what I've heard, is they did not leave for higher salaries elsewhere. Whether they retired or just transferred, it wasn't for a higher salary.
Well, and I think
But-
I think that's always been the case to a certain extent. People are looking for more opportunities. It depends on where they are in their career path. They may want to gain some supervisory skills, some other types of skill sets to enhance their knowledge base and their opportunities in the future. I think that plays into it pretty heavily.
Well, are the comparable districts that we talk about, 8 or 9 or 10 or whatever, what do their salary grids look like? I presume those are public documents.
Yeah, well, their salary grids are, our salary grid is a direct depiction of what theirs are as far as the market as a whole as of June 2023. I think if I would have gone out for recruitment in June of 2023, I probably wouldn't be in the same position I'm in now. I think things have changed drastically, I think, in just that 1 year. I'll give a really good example. There's a competing agency 25 miles from us. They have multiple positions of an operator level, and they have gone out for recruitment multiple times. They have raised their salaries each time 8%. And still have
Each time.
Yes.
I mean, they've made
16%.
multiple
Correct.
8% increases
correct.
in their general salary.
Correct.
Okay. Is that what we need to do?
I'm saying that is what other people are doing with the same problem that we have. I think it, do we want to afford it? Can we afford it? If we don't do that and at least try it, where will we be? I think that's really the conversation is that we really can't leave a significant amount of positions vacant. It costs money to go out for recruitment.
We're talking about 20% vacancies right now.
Yes.
And that's got to be a terrific strain on the entire staff.
That's definitely
And
burden some to
this
the
is still
staff.
a long-term problem. And so this is not like we've had people gone for a couple of months. We've had leaves of absences that have been being covered for the last 2 years on and off in some of these positions. We have had vacancies, they've been covering other positions and other teams for probably on and off for 2 years.
For too long.
And so, and these folks have their own, professional growth goals and want to focus on being able to attend classes and seminars. And this is preventing them from being able to do that because they're
Not enough hours for,
Correct.
not enough staff hours to
Correct.
cover the job. Well, what do you think? The last time I remember a situation like this was in the 70s when inflation was high during the Carter years. And I was at Rockwell at the time, and we had to increase all the salaries to keep people from leaving and to be able to get new, now I'm talking aerospace engineers as well as people that were in shipping and receiving and test and all that kind of stuff. And I fear that over the last couple of years, we've kind of edged into the same kind of territory again. And it's going to take some big step to get back to competitive in terms of recruiting.
Well, my life experience when I was young, OPEC was created and sent the price of oil up to, they were back then $30, $40 a barrel. And oil companies were flush with cash and they needed to go out throughout the world and drill for oil, drill, baby, drill. And so they hired a whole bunch of us youngsters out of college.
Okay.
All right. And I was one of them. And I think back to the early part of my career, I had responsibilities in my late 20s that today engineers in their 30s and 40s don't even have. And so they hired all these young kids and they sent us out in the world.
And crossed their fingers.
Well, they had money. Money was no object. I had projects where people would come to me and they would say, Jim, is this going to work? They never came to me and said, Jim, you're spending too much money on engineering because it had to work. Your standby time might be $50,000 a day for an installation spread. And if you screwed up, you're losing big money. So my point, I guess I'm getting to here is that I was hired at a young age, thrown out into the business world, given a ton of responsibility, and I did okay. And I'm wondering if there's young kids nowadays, because we have all these regulations and all these rules that say, oh, you have to have this certification and that certification. No, you just hire smart people and they'll figure it out. And they'll take the tests and pass the exams or whatever eventually. But I think our
Sounds
focus,
like an argument for hiring engineers in training or operators in training.
exactly, that's kind of where I'm going with it. And yeah, there's a risk involved in that, but there's a risk not having a grade 4 professional. When are you going to retire? It's something we got to have.
2.5 to 4 years.
We got at least 2.5 years. So you got,
I think the hard part with operators and training, because I love the concept of it, they can't legally do some of the work. So you still have other people doing the work. The law.
so they can do the work as long as it's supervised.
But not necessarily, like, so in the treatment plant, they can't even be on call at all at a certain level. Then they have to, if they're on call, they have to have somebody else on call with them. So
You're burning supervisor hours at the same time.
They can't make operational decisions or changes, then they have to be under direct supervision, until such time as they get their grade 1. And as far as coming on call, then they have to demonstrate and kind of qualify the group to work weekends, and we can all have comfort that they're gonna communicate and make the right call, make the right decision,
Not screw up.
and exactly. So
But could you have somebody that was an entry level and going out and driving around on the weekends, checking things out? They get the alarm, they go down and they say, they have a big decision to make, which is, do I call my supervisor or do I?
well, it'd have to be at least a grade 3 to be loan operator status, to where they could check things and make the call to somebody who would be essentially backing them up at that time. A backup would be a grade 3 or above. Yeah, for the plan.
But sometimes things can be handled relatively simply. The failure is something that isn't life-threatening or health-threatening or something. We used to have this, we were when I was at United, we had this expression, oh, we had a call out last weekend. What was the call out? Oh, we had to reset the Zycom. It was, they made it like it was this big fancy thing. Well, resetting the Zycom is that you unplugged it and you plugged it back into the wall.
Yeah.
That was resetting the Zycom.
Yeah.
Anybody could do this.
Sometimes, those are the ones we're thankful for. Sometimes you have to do a reset. But I think that the biggest thing is having enough knowledge and experience to be able to see the whole picture and how one thing affects the other and kind of developing a plan. When somebody calls me, the expectation that I have is for them to let me know what the problem is and what they plan to do about it. And then I can jump in and say, okay, that's a great plan. Thank you very much. Let me know how it goes. Or I can change your direction a little bit. Well, maybe we should consider this or consider that. It's a learning process, but it's also a knowledge-based skill process.
Well,
It's a matter of the person who knows how is always going to work for the person who knows why. There's the man that knows why. And if you're a how person, you can't make why decisions. You know how to do something, but you don't know if that's the right thing to do. He'll know what's the right thing to do.
Well, I agree with.
Or a supervisor will know what's the right thing to do.
Or a lead operator that has a lot that has the experience. I agree with Allison. Yeah, ideally it would be great to bring people up that you know who you're getting and who you can place where and what their strengths and skills are. We're also a very small crew, and it's hard to absorb bringing people in and training them and spending the time. And, it basically adds another half a job to your job. Currently we're doing a lot of things and we're currently kind of.
A lot of people already doing another half job.
Yeah.
oh, we got 40 openings. We got 40 openings in our area for the same job we're looking for. How do we fill them?
That's the
How do
question.
we differentiate this district?
Yeah.
On that common set of requirements?
Yeah.
That's how we
I have to
differentiate.
say, the only thing I can think of is financial. If we offer 10% or 15% more than we're currently offering, and we'd have to do that, I think, by changing the grid, which means that all of the existing employees get that 10 or 15% raise in order to be able to offer it to someone new. This is one thing that we did get into in Rockwell in the 70s, is they started recruiting at higher salaries without changing any existing salaries. We called it salary compression. You wound up with junior people making more than journeymen because they were hired under a different set of rules. And that created resentments throughout the plant, whether it was in engineering or any other place. I don't think we can do that. The question is, can we afford to raise all the salaries by 10% or 15% or whatever in order to clear these vacancies? That if we don't clear them, I fear we're going to have existing employees go somewhere where there aren't so many vacancies and they can get back to doing one job instead of 1.5 jobs or 2 jobs the way they're doing here. I don't know. Is there something else to do?
I mean, we have upcoming retirements. Well, it's just.
Well, the basic problem is there's no starter homes available in this area. Starter home costs $1 million.
It does.
Yeah.
I saw 2 lately in Ojai, one of 1,000 square feet, one of 1,200 square feet,
Yeah, my wife looked at all.
built in the 50s, and they both sold for $1.2 million. Wow.
So how do you get anybody to move here?
In the city, this is in the city.
Right. Well, you can come slum in my neighborhood, you can get one for 8 million,
800,000,
for 800,000, yeah.
and then go try to put together even a 10% down payment. That's a big number. So you wind up renting.
Do we have any land, surplus land that we own?
No. We're really-
Well, I mean, land that, the school district is looking at converting teacher housing, to fill out the teacher housing, right? So they can, because how else can you get teachers to work?
No, I mean, it's not just an industry specific thing. I think but it's a government, public agency. sort of
Teachers have
thing.
certification requirements too.
Yeah. I mean, if you start looking at that, if you have a common denominator and then you basically choose your best quality of life geography wise and balance sort of pros and cons, and it becomes hard to recruit in areas like this. I mean, it's a gorgeous place to live, but you're working to live. What is the word? Vice versa, what's that thing? Like, it's, I mean, it's a tough one. Yeah, yeah, that was. I know, we put it out there for consideration because essentially all I can do is go back out for recruitment again.
Yeah, I think,
The policy consideration.
I think as burnout as our people are right now, still don't think it's prudent to go back to the whole process again that we've just been through a few times to get nothing.
That's the definition of insanity.
Maybe, yeah, do the same thing over and over again, expect change.
Yeah, expect a different result.
Yeah, it's a hard spot to be in.
I liken this to having your house on the market for too long. You have to pull it off and readjust to put it back out there.
Yeah.
I feel like that's exactly what the situation is.
Yeah,
right
well,
now.
Except this number's going up and your house number's going down.
Or you fancy it up a little bit and put it back out.
And it may be just a matter of the tide changing in November. Yeah, depends how this election comes out. That may change something too.
Nobody's offering any good solutions of any kind.
No, there's not. I don't have any good solutions on.
I know, we don't have a crystal ball. We can only essentially, try to strategize the best we can.
I think what we should do is interview those two we've got for an operator and see if we've got anything there. And then
And
that,
hire one of,
and that,
ourselves, we're gonna hire one of those two.
and then that gets us, man, I would just hire one just to get one in there, but if they look like,
Why not? Then we look for someone else to come in.
But we are recruiting against certification requirements.
That one is very specific. The senior treatment plant operator for is very certification and experience specific.
You know,
And so it's you either qualify or you don't. It's not, there's no, meet the minimum qualifications if the yes or no.
and they can take on a little bit of a number of people's jobs, I would think.
Yes, in one,
To help.
at the treatment, we're not anywhere else. So.
But we've still got collection system. How many collection system operators do we have open?
One,
Just one.
Yeah.
And have we gotten anything there? Nothing?
that's the one I've been out for recruitment twice on over the course of the last.
That's
4
for a
months.
1, 2, or a 3.
Yes,
Or a four?
1, 2, 3, or 4, any of the above. Because if they have an existing one, they can do a lot of stuff as long as they have a Class B license, et cetera. We wouldn't want them to be a one forever, but a little bit easier to bring them through as a one.
What keeps you from getting a Class B license besides too many DUIs or moving violations or something?
Yeah, nothing, just, you gotta do a driver's test and,
clean
you're
room,
able to do the inspection.
pass a random drug test if you get pulled in on a rule.
Yes,
Don't eat any poppy muffins. So,
Well, we identified the problem.
the salary compression that I saw in the 70s in Rockwell was just corrosive. I can't see us going that way.
Yeah, that never works.
Well, it's a short-term solution that frankly, excuse my French, pisses off the rest of the employees. I don't see that as a way to get there. But I don't see anything except finances to differentiate us right now. Because the rest of the requirements are set for all these jobs. terms of certifications and ability to respond to a call out at a given time or whatever. And so it's one of those bad things when you're negotiating, if you get down to there's only one thing left to decide in a negotiation, then there's going to be a winner and a loser. If you get down to two things to negotiate, maybe each side can trade one for the other and you can reach an agreement. We don't have but one thing here to negotiate unless you say, this is such a wonderful place to live, that's the second thing that we negotiate with. But if the people that we're recruiting are all local, then that's gone away. Except in terms of commute time and response to callouts, that kind of restricts us to people that live, within 15 or 20 miles of the plant or the collection system. So that's what we're recruiting to anyway.
Essentially, we're
So we're down to one thing, I think, and that's finance services. Whether it's cash back or the size of the cafeteria plan or the levels of salary, it's one thing. Because everywhere else is the same. It's the same requirements. It's the same job. What do we do? How do we become different to recruit people? I don't see anything except dollars. And I hate to get to that point, but there are no other things we can trade off against dollars in this situation, at least that I can see.
There is something we can trade off.
Okay,
Entry into a great booming field. There's a lot of people who would like to be working here, but they can't get that first job. That's particularly true in the water business, but I assume it's true here as well. You know, once you get into the water, if you're fairly competent, once you get into the water or wastewater business, there's a career path you can follow. You know, if you're technically savvy, and people want to work here and make those kind of salaries. We offer, our salaries have got to be more than what the industry pays, unless you're an engineer. So we can offer.
degreed engineers are probably doing better on the outside,
Yeah. But I mean, that's something we can offer, and it kind of ties into my argument about entry level people. I think some of the more successful hires that I've had when I worked for a public agency was the people that I knew were smart. And they didn't have all the certifications, they didn't have all the experience, but they were smart, and then some of the people on the interview panel might say, well, yeah, but we don't need someone who's smart. We need someone who can change the oil of the trucks. And I say, don't worry about that. They'll change the oil when they have to, but they're going to be able to move up through this organization. And I have a few hires really turn out to be that way. So if we can hire people who are smart and wanting to get in, make something of themselves to get into a good field, to make a good living, that's what we can offer people. But unfortunately, that requires us to figure out how to make that work, how to train people.
What's it take to get a level 1 certification?
You have to have a year experience, actual hands-on experience in the plant, and obviously pass the thing.
You pass the exam before you
You
get
can pass the
the,
exam before and get a grade 1 operator training, but then you have to meet the experience requirements, so you actually get the certificate on the wall.
I don't know, I don't think that for our organization is viable for the plant, because we are looking for a chief plant operator person.
Well,
And
That's-
that we can.
that's a whole different-
Like,
that's a different.
for
I'm not
collection
proposing
system,
that.
collection system, but we have, our first round that we went out for recruitment was the collection system operator 1 was written such that they could have, as long as they obtained a 1 within 12 months, and we got the exact same number of applicants, just so you know, like, even it was sort of worded like a training position. And we've always done that and gotten far more qualified people and never had to sort of exercise that lower end. And we got the exact same result out of it, the exact same.
And a lot more volume of applicants. And we're just not seeing people chomping at the bit to apply. Like we've seen.
The exact same number of applicants. How many applicants did we get against election system operator?
10. I normally would have 70.
Okay. Was there one acceptable in the 10?
There were 2 that met the minimum qualifications. And like I said, of those 2 would probably not be in my first round of interviews of the 70 I would normally get.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. But one of those 2 might work.
Yes. There's a side conversation about that. When you recruit it at a 1 through 4, it's very hard when you don't have a large volume of applicants because they are not like for like in their experience and qualification.
Yep.
It is hard to choose when you have the extreme. It is hard to choose one versus the other because they're
One
not
might qualify as a 1 and the other one qualifies as a 2. Which one do you hire? Is it that kind of
It's
question?
that kind of thing. It's hard to justify that one is equally qualified as the other to even evaluate them against each other, if that makes sense. And that's the only, when you have a large volume of applicants, you can sort of do that. When you have a small volume and them at one end of the bookend and the other, it's very hard to actually go through the interview and selection process like that. Your decision making is limited by virtue of the span of qualification.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, what's your feeling? Do we need, is it possible that we can get a collection system operator out of the applicants that we have?
No.
Conversations and getting into the details, that would be great.
Well, no names mentioned, obviously, but the 2 that were minimally qualified would not ordinarily be hired here.
I don't want to say that necessarily. Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily say that. No, I don't.
But we're not anxious to hire those 2.
I say in generality, I wouldn't call it a competitive recruitment. As in, I don't think you have enough of a volume of candidates to actually select someone based on multiple criteria. So fit and certification. I think that you, like I said, you don't have enough of a volume to get a diversity. You have 2 bookends, what you have, and that's very hard to choose because they're not really comparing apples and apples.
Mhm.
That's
Picking 1 of 2 is probably just not a good practice.
especially with the span of, like I said, one being minimally qualified and one being qualified and nothing in between.
And the one that's qualified is not an employee that we really want, it sounds like.
So I can't say that.
Well, we're not, I mean, there's no names here. I have no idea who applied. So, but
Potentially not.
What is our probationary period for new employees?
Our probationary period is 6 months unless there is a contingency on their probation. So for example, if they have to reach a certain certification benchmark within a year, the probation is a year. So for example, if we say that you start as a 1 and you have to reach a 2 by your anniversary, their probation period is a year because their probation is contingent on a specific achievement. But standardly for people who don't have any contingency, it's 6 months.
they're already qualified for the position they were hired into.
Correct.
Do you ever have concerns that some of your employees, or some of your potential candidates are not going to pass the exam? If that's your concern?
Well, that's a risk that you take when you hire somebody that doesn't already have the certification that you need. You may think that they're the most wonderful employee ever, but if they don't meet the minimum need that you have to be willing to let them go. Otherwise, you don't have people to do the work ultimately that you need. So for example, if you hired someone that was a 2 and you really need a 3 because the law says that they need to be able to do X, Y, and Z, and they have to be a 3. If they're a 2 and they don't pass their 3 exam in the time frame that they needed to as part of their probationary period, you've invested a year in somebody who did not achieve the objective as part of their probationary period, and you have to be willing to let them go and start over. It's a huge investment in time to do that, and it's devastating. But otherwise, you keep them and you acquire a volume of employees, and then you end up with this enormous gap.
You wind up with less than desirable
And it's
qualifications.
really specific to essentially this industry and the positions we're talking about. Like if you were to apply this situation to a lot of other public agencies and normal admin positions or other technical positions, this wouldn't be the case. These are just very, very specific positions where other certifying bodies are telling us how we can utilize these people within the compounds of the law and what they've been essentially certified to be safely competent to do. I mean, and so we are limited in how we can utilize them without being in violation. So our hands are a little bit tied that way also, unfortunately.
Obviously, I'm grasping at straws here.
Yeah.
Bradshaw, in your experience with new hires in your field, how many months does it take for you to figure out somebody's not working out?
The first 6 months, everybody's seemingly on their best behavior. But if you take the plant, for example, it takes a couple of years to learn that plant. And some things, even in the course of 2 years, you don't get to do that on. So to really gauge the diversity of somebody's skills and their abilities and their confidence level, it takes a while. I personally don't think 6 months is enough, in that particular case. Maybe you can get a better idea in collections, with, they do a lot of similar stuff and they do a lot of stuff. They're doing lift stations and they're doing cleaning, they're doing CCTVing, they might not be dealing with a whole diversity of problems and troubleshooting and how one thing affects the other. Every piece of the process plant ties into something
They
else.
don't have the chemistry.
Right, yeah, chemistry,
Yeah.
yeah, and the biology and all those kind of things. So, you might get a little quicker idea of your collections, but, to me, it takes a couple of years to really get a good sound idea of whether somebody's gonna work out.
So when you interview an applicant, you're thinking to yourself, can I stand to have this person here for 2 years and not work out?
Well, usually if they get through the probationary period and they're working out pretty well and they just meet the minimum requirements from then on, you're kind of stuck. That's where I don't want to go. That's why the disparity between collection system lower level and higher level and only having 2, I'm not really a fan of just picking one of the 2. Yeah, I'd rather have a little bit better pool to pull from. In my personal.
What would be in that little bit better pool?
I'd like to see at least 5.
Yeah, there are some really
But-
stellar
but
people out there.
What would the characteristics of the 3rd, 4th, or 5th applicant that would cause you to pick
Well,
one
it
of
would
them
give us
rather than the
maybe
2 we have?
there's some more experience information. Maybe there's some more skills they developed other places. Things like that. Something that we could just have a little bit more information to kind of drill down on and pick somebody out of a little bit bigger pool. Because in our industry, I mean, somebody goes past probation and they decide to just settle in and just meet the minimum performance standards. I mean, that's not what I would recommend.
You can't afford to have a lot of followers
Right.
as opposed to
Well,
leaders.
We're small. We're small. We need
this size group,
go-getters that are going to take on the duties and the responsibilities, and even if they don't choose to take on the higher level responsibilities, but they react and they react appropriately and they're there and they're attentive and their attendance is good and they're a team player and they're fully engaged. That's what I'm looking for because people have vacation, or on sick leave, and things happen with family, you know. We can get a lot smaller very quickly, you know, when you only have, you know, 4 or 5 operators on the ground. You know, and that plant runs 24 hours a day, it never shuts off. So, you know, we don't turn off the switch and go home at night. We're monitoring, and if things are going on, we're monitoring more and more.
Somebody's watching it 24 hours a
Always,
day, of course.
I'm always checking in because it's a compliance thing. Where are we? You know, where are we at? How's the plant going? Can I help? Can I offer advice? Can I maybe keep things from falling off the cliff as I see it, you know? And we all work together in that respect. So I'm looking for that when it comes to the plant.
Bill? What do you think? Jim seems to be in favor of hiring X in training. If we can find smart people.
Yeah,
And take the risk that they'll make the certifications they need to. And I'm kind of not, I wouldn't say at the other end, but I'm thinking more, we've got to raise the bar for everybody in order to get people that already have the certification. Because we're going to break this staff if we go another year with four vacancies.
No, I certainly wouldn't want to go another year. That's just too long, but I would certainly take a look at backing off and see what we've got for our grade 4 treatment plant person, and don't post these other 2 until after November or even after maybe first of the year. You're going to have either an interim face in the staff or a permanent manager in the staff at that point. And that
Subject of our next meeting.
may
Yes.
that may bring, you know, that may bring some more complexion to this whole situation. Maybe they have some personal ties to some people that they can steal away. Just a thought. We've worked so hard to get this survey done and these grids all put together. Seems like now we're in this mode to keep pushing stuff out.
It
Yeah,
it does feel a lot like the class and comp, or the comp part of the class and comp study was overtaken by events.
Yeah, I think so.
That's not the fault of the people that did the work.
It's just the irony of the
It's-
time.
yeah, I think
We're a
it's
year
just-
behind and a lot has changed in a year.
Yeah.
The data is outdated just because of the hiring market. And that plays a huge factor in what your results will be, is the demand in the market.
You could say, well, inflation is down. That means not prices are down. That means prices aren't going up as fast as they used to. But they're still higher than they were a month or 2 ago. And that
they're still going up.
a few of us lived through the 70s and had to watch that happen. And it was a terrible thing for everyone.
This is worse, isn't it? This is worse than the 70s. I don't think we went up much over.
Oh, the crime rate hit 15% at one point.
That's what we had.
Think about that. Yeah. And so there was a lot of turmoil, and things arguably were worse in 82 than they were in 80. But we did have a new president. That's why Carter was a 1-term president. And so what did we do? We paid people more, but we did it in the wrong way. If we're going to pay people more here, I think we need to do it in the right way and pay everybody more. If we don't do that, then the question in my mind is, what are we gonna do differently in the next round of recruiting? I don't know.
I don't know either.
But, okay, November is what, 3 months away? What do we think of these two candidates for the operator 4? Is one of them a possibility?
Either could be a possibility. I mean, they both meet
They both.
the qualifications.
Yeah, you won't really good feel till after you interview.
Yeah.
That was folks.
And we don't, like, we're not really sure, like, in this particular recruitment, I mean, we hope that they're serious about, potentially looking for their next, place, but we won't know that until then. I mean, it's a very, like, high level experienced position. And so, like I said, that was never gonna be a large volume of applicants. We expected 3 times as many. But that was our hope.
But you said the operator 1 position was written as though someone in training could qualify for it.
The first round was written that way. When we went out the second time, we decided to make it a 1, 2, 3, or 4, but make the 1 have to have a 1. Just because in reflecting on staff capacity and sort of what we were trying to achieve in filling these positions, it somewhat felt like it was repeating the same mistake over a long period of time. And it's ultimately, like I said, having staff put in the resources to train somebody who isn't successful in getting the certification or the driver's license make them unusable to us until such time they can do that, which could be, it didn't necessarily fill the gap. So we opted to essentially take our position descriptions and say, we'll take any one of these, from someone who has a minimum experience, a year plus certification, but it's worked in for another agency, or somebody who's well vested in the agency and their system, and we ended up with exactly the result.
Which was no applicants.
Two met the minimum qualifications and 10 total. 8 that did not meet the minimum qualifications at all.
They applied for the job and didn't have the certification.
Or the experience.
They were all ones that applied for a TV cable job. And they said, what, you mean I gotta carry ladders?
Can't do that.
Are there any local job fairs? Do they do that?
The county of Ventura, to put this into perspective, the county of Ventura is hosting a job fair, a massive job fair, which they do when they're having challenges recruiting. And they're also offering signing bonuses for a lot of their technical positions now because they're having such a hard. So they're having equally as hard of a time recruiting people, which may be good for them in an economic downturn because they do reduction in force. And so if they have less staff, less of an impact on the ones they have, but they have massive amounts of jobs available.
Do they?
So across every state, they must have hundreds open right now.
I give myself a look for.
So I thought didn't really help you, did it?
Well, would signing bonuses be an answer? It's still a financial answer.
It doesn't piss everybody else off. Does it?
I don't know. I don't know if it does. I've never been in an industry where there were signing bonuses.
Well, I would consider it.
Well, I shouldn't say that. I turned down one. It was for a move from Cincinnati to Washington, D.C. I said, if that signing bonus were real, assuming even if that it was, I still can't afford to live here. So. But I think we have to do something. We're not getting quality applicants. But what would get quality applicants?
But it sounds like nobody else is either.
Everybody is challenged right now.
So I don't
You're
know.
saying people have increased their base salaries 10 to 15%, and they're still getting no qualified applicants or,
I mean, some people have gotten applicants, I mean, and some people have hired. So I'm not saying that nobody's getting anything. I mean, we have seen people actually fill their vacancies. We've seen the corresponding responses. I can't guarantee that that's a solution. I'm saying that that is what people are doing. And some people are filling their vacancies or not. I mean, I can only speak to those particular facts because they're not part of their thought process and, you know, what exactly they have. I mean, like I said, there are agencies with multiple operator bases, like small agencies like us. I mean, so that, I mean, they're going to react because they have to get people. I mean, so whatever that may be.
I hadn't thought about signing. We could do that without changing the salary grid,
Yeah,
without compromising the comp study. Although it's a year out of date at this point, and arguably a pretty significant year. But I don't see us being able to do nothing except try the same old job descriptions and salaries and benefits that haven't worked.
I think my perspective on signing bonuses is it doesn't promote retention because when everybody's offering them, you have people that take your signing bonus, stay the minimum amount of time and move on to the next signing bonus. It doesn't promote retention. It only promotes the hiring of the person, but there isn't an incentive for them to stay.
Yeah, I don't necessarily know that you get really quality applicants. You get more somebody's just like you say, looking for the
Job hoppers.
the quick cash. I know, I certainly. I would say that I don't support changing the pay scales. I just wouldn't support doing it today. Try and get applicants.
You would not support doing it today.
Not today, no. I think I would rather see us just hold off for a few months and see how things change. Revisit changing the scales at that point. That's where we think we need to go.
Yeah, I'm afraid one of those places is somewhere we're gonna have to go. But I don't know.
Well, I'm sure we might, it's possible that we will.
well, at least we've aired the problem out and discussed it for the first time today. I don't think we're gonna be able to solve it today, but I think we can all continue thinking about it.
Well, the question is, do we make any recommendation to the full board right now about what to do?
I don't think we're ready to make any recommendation other than, I think Allison and Bradshaw have said what they're gonna do over the short term. We can
At
do
least for one of the operator positions,
one of the operator
the
positions.
floor position. But the rest, I don't see that I've heard anything new we're gonna try or any different results that we expect to get from trying anything at all. And that's what concerns me, is that we have an ongoing burden on our staff that is not going to go away until we get some more people. And I don't know what to do otherwise. How do we get more people when what we're doing clearly isn't working?
You got me.
I can understand the argument that hiring, if you went back to the original write-up that you had for level one, that would at least be something different from what our second round
Yep.
produced. Nothing of value,
That's what we did in our first round.
right?
Yes, I mean, we could do that. It's essentially, like I said, it's essentially an operator in training. So they wouldn't meet our, you know, I mean, like I said, we would be leveraging our existing resources more in that department. That's also the department that is filling one of the complete vacancies and has been for 2 years, our environmental compliance inspector on and off. But they simply do not have capacity to have somebody at that level right now. Because one of those operators is completely doing inspection.
And they don't have time to train someone new.
No.
Why don't we just, I'll think about it and then have another committee meeting.
Well, let's see what happens with the operator 4. Okay. And if we can find a quality new employee,
Sure.
then a month from now or 2 months from now, whenever they start, and you can begin to tell if that's going to help any. Then we come back to the same questions again. It is only 3 months to the election. I'm not sure what difference that'll make, but so
It depends, I guess, on what newscast you watch, you know?
Yeah,
what you
maybe
think
the
is gonna
pendulum
happen?
will swing the other way and maybe there'll be some new perspective.
Yeah,
but,
you don't know, it's
Yeah,
just, it's
yeah.
something that.
Okay, so I'm hearing that we'll hold off on, we'll interview the 2 that we have, for the senior treatment plant operator for, we'll hold off on any re-recruitment for those. We'll also hold off on our environmental compliance inspector recruitment. So, and then until such time, we'll bring this back to the board with a report out on our results of the 2 that we did interview, and then we can decide at that time what we want to do with the
Well, you'll
remaining.
have results a month from now.
Yes, we'll either have 4 vacancies or we'll have 3.
Yes.
You know, that environmental compliance, we haven't officially endorsed that as a recruitable position yet.
No, not until the full board adopts that reclassification.
Okay. Not very satisfying, but nothing's very satisfying right now about what's going on.
Yeah.
Yeah, but thank you for your consideration.
Yeah.
Well, okay. There being no other obvious business before the committee at 5:48, we're adjourned. And at 6 o'clock, we'll try something different.